Hello, everyone. I'm very pleased to be giving my presentation to you today. And I would like to thank Professor Marianne Bouguiou-Lescou for her kind invitation to participate to this important conference. I will begin by underlining that Spinoza's concept of divine will inaugurate a purely deterministic approach. And one consequence of this approach is to deny human free will. While strongly influenced by Maimonides, he opposed Maimonides, for whom divine will was the condition of creation and of human free will, as well as allowing the performance of divine commandment. In this paper, I will suggest that Leibniz's defense of the concept of possibility aims to refute Spinoza's thesis in line with its anticipated criticism by Maimonides. In his Ethics, Spinoza seeks to prove that the will cannot be called a free cause, but only a necessary one, from which it follows that God does not operate through the freedom of will. The demonstration of this statement refers to the definition 7 of the first part of the Ethics, according to which a thing is said to be free if it exists solely by the necessity of its nature and is determined by itself alone to act. Spinoza specifies that a thing is said to be necessary or rather compelled if it is determined by something else to exist and to act. Then Spinoza distinguishes between acting freely, as only God can do, and the human illusion of being able to act according to free will. He then denounces those who arbitrarily attribute to God another freedom. I will now show that Spinoza never refutes the thesis defended in particular by Maimonides and taken up by Hugo Boxel, who denounces the assimilation of divine eternity to natural necessity. Boxall wrote to Spinoza that God's will is indeed eternal, but it doesn't follow that the world is also eternal, insofar as God can decree from all eternity that he would create the world at a time which he would choose. And this implies that the created world always maintains contingent. In his replies, Spinoza does refer indeed to Maimonides' thesis that nature cannot be the work of change. But unlike Maimonides, he refused to consider that nature proceeds from a divine choice. This double hypothesis would then require, according to Spinoza, to conceive God's will as being distinct from his understanding. However, divine will and understanding are only one and the same reality. It is therefore absurd to try to separate them, because such a separation proceeds solely from anthropomorphism. For Spinoza, when man affirms that there is a divine will, he is merely projecting his own characteristic on God, just as the triangle, if he could speak, would say that God is eminently triangular, and the circle that the nature of God is eminently circular. Spinoza excludes any possible world that is not actual. It should be remembered that Leibniz, a few weeks before his meeting with Spinoza in The Hague, in November 1676, wrote a series of notes in which he seems to have adopted the necessitarianism of the ethics. But 1 year later, following his confrontation with Niels Stensen's on the theme of fatalism and divine freedom, he began to adopt the doctrine of possible worlds. This is why, contrary to the necessitarianism of the actual, Leibniz posits that God understands not only everything that is and that will be, but also all the possibilities which proceed from the will of God. Leibniz refers to fatalism by reference to Maimonides' Guides for the Perplexed, which he read in Latin translation, a work he considered remarkable and worthy of careful reading. He particularly notices his criticism of the Asherite, who support the thesis that everything happens necessarily. It follows from this that nothing is in the power of man, and that everything we call possible becomes necessary. Marshall Gerhardt pointed out that despite the obvious analogies between the Asherite and Spinoza, the doctrine of the ethics is different. In that sense, everything necessarily results from the essence of God. The world is governed by a rational necessity that is not arbitrary and that opposes any kind of fatality. It should be noted that in his critiques of the Asherites, Maimonides denounced that they are abolishing the notion of possible, and as a consequence, they abolishes all the religious laws because they don't have any more utility. When the possible is itself impossible, man cannot accomplish what has been commanded to him, and he cannot be refrained from what has been forbidden to him. Thus, Maimonides denounced in advance Spinoza's negation of the notion of possibilities, which he reduced to a lack of knowledge. Maimonides also denounces the idea defended by Spinoza that the political legislation of the Hebrews, to which he reduced all divine commandment, has become obsolete due to the destruction of their state. While Spinoza's thesis is opposed to the Hebrew conception of will, Maimonides points out that it is only by homonymy that the name of will is applied both to our will and to God's will, because these two kinds of will cannot be compared in any way. Maimonides stresses that the foundation of every existence is not necessity, but the absolute will of God, which is not determined and not limited by any natural determinism. In a causal relation, the nature of the effect depends on that of its cause, while the thing that is wanted always remains heterogeneous to the act of willing from which it proceeds. According to Maimonides, causality implies a relation of similarity, but the act of wanting involves a relationship between two dissimilar entities. And since there is nothing in common between the creator and his creatures, the act of creation cannot be causal, but only volitional. the absolute dissimilarity between the creator and his creation implies an asymmetrical relationship with his one of effusion or influence, which Maimonides compared to the product of a water spring, which profusion remains inexhaustible. The notion of outpouring is that allows us to articulate the act of continuous creation with a prophetic experience proceeding from divine influence. The example of the spring is of a Kabbalistic origin. It was used by Solomon ibn Gabirol in the 11th century, and it connotes the idea of a free, directed, and generous outpouring as opposed to the notion of causality, which describes automatic, unintentional, and that implies purely rigorous determinism. The amount of divine profusion or restriction capable of reaching human always remains proportional to the degree of fulfillment or transgression by man of the divine commandment. However, even if necessity cannot concern the divine will considered in itself, the dimensions that man perceives of the Creator can be described in terms of necessity. Thus, for example, it follows from God's essence that He is necessarily good, but this necessity proceeds only from our perception of divine greatness and not from His being in itself. In fact, the expression necessity of divine nature is contradictory. Indeed, for the monotheist man, God is in no way necessary, whereas for the materialist philosopher, necessity cannot be divine unless, as Spinoza did, one identifies God with nature. In his note on the Guide of the Perplexed, Leibniz notably retained the 19th proposition of the introduction to the second part of the guide regarding possibility. The notion of possible existence is directly opposed to Spinoza's necessitarianism. Shortly after meeting Spinoza, Leibniz noted in opposition to him that if all possibilities were actual, then only a possible world will suffice. Therefore, there could be no God except as a possible being. Leibniz underlined that the true cause producing something to exist rather than others must derive from the free decrees of the divine will, which is the will to do everything in the best way. In the Theodicies, Leibniz underlines that contingency belongs to the realm of the possible, and that God never fails to choose the best, but without being compelled to do so. Thank you very much for your kind attention.